Hello and welcome again to another attempt to talk to Tania Shelelko. I tried last week, but as it turned out, her internet connection had basically been blown out. One of the things that lots of Ukrainians are living with this winter, this autumn, is the fact that yet again Russia is using massed missile attacks to target Ukrainian infrastructure, basically in an attempt to demoralize Ukrainians, to make Ukrainian cities uninhabitable. They target water supplies, they target internet supplies, they target power supplies, in the hope of freezing and intimidating people, into giving up. It's particularly strange for me to be doing this today, really, because the last couple of days have been really lovely autumn days. Yesterday I did a big 10-mile walk through Richmond Park and over Wimbledon Common, and it was a kind of lovely autumnal kind of day with all the kind of golds and yellows out on the trees. And it's very hard, I guess, for a lot of people outside Ukraine on days like that to think about and bear in mind what Ukrainians are currently going through and experiencing. We're now into something like the 14th or 15th month of the battle for Pokrovsk. For those of you who don't know, before the war, Pokrovsk, sort of up in the northeast of Ukraine, used to be a kind of small city of around 60,000 people. The Russians have been trying to take it for the last 14, 15 months at incredible cost to themselves, and still haven't fully taken control of the city. But it's turning out to be one of the longest kind of military battles of the last 100 years, really. And the Ukrainian defenders are hanging in there and, trying to protect the city, which is now basically just almost, I've seen videos from Pokrovsk, and it's almost like some kind of video game hellscape of just destroyed buildings everywhere. This is Russian liberation of the Russian-speaking areas of Ukraine. At the same time, what we're also seeing away from the headlines is a sort of ongoing ranged... Sorry, that was... Yeah, Eva, that was where you used to go on holiday. Jesus. Yeah. What we're also seeing is a sort of increasing long-range attacks from both sides. Because of Western inability to fully support Ukraine over the last 3.5 years, the Ukrainians have basically had to develop their own long-range missiles. Missiles we could have provided them with and given them permission to use a long time ago. But we didn't, because we were tricked by Russian threats of, escalation. And while we failed to provide those weapons, Russia escalated anyway. And now what you're starting to see is Ukrainian-made missiles being used to target Russian oil refineries, oil kind of keeping places, Russian factories, Russian trains and military infrastructure objects. And possibly what we're going to start seeing this winter is, as well as Russia targeting the infrastructure that Ukrainian cities depend upon, we might also start to see Ukraine finally being able to hit back against the aggressor nation and hit these kinds of places inside Ukraine as well. So today I'm joined by Tania, and I've just seen she sent me a request, so let me accept that request and get her with me, and she can tell you more about what's happening there where she is. To everyone who's joined us. Let's see if that worked or not. Should do. Hey.
Hello.
Hello, Tania. Finally, you made it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks.
Yeah, you're in Kyiv at the moment, yeah?
Yes,
Yeah.
right now here.
How is it? How's the weekend been?
Quite a nice weekend. It was a great weather, wonderful autumn, and well, that's something I was trying to focus on, the great weather.
Yeah. And you've got power and you've got your internet connection back and everything.
At the moment, yes. Yes, we have these not like blackouts. They are usually scheduled, but during the weekend there was none. So I think that our energy systems are really working hard and doing really great job on renovating everything and getting everything back in order.
Yeah, it always amazes me how quickly they're generally able to get everything back up and running.
I know,
Yeah,
and a lot of like journalists come here just to learn how you're doing this,
yeah.
so we can share it with Europe, just in case, you know.
I, I I think Europe has woken up to the fact that Ukraine already knows how to do lots of things that the rest of Europe doesn't yet know how to do. You
Yeah.
know, like take down drones and you know, that kind of thing. Well, Europe's still doing that the very expensive way, I think.
Uh, well, because I think because they didn't have to deal with this. I know that there are systems that might be working, but a lot of things are not thought through very
Yeah,
well. For example, in both, as we saw it in Denmark and in Norway, with these situations, they could have. That was quite a surprise, of course, and I'm sure they had all the systems. But since there are no specialists who know how to
yeah,
work with it properly and they don't meet these things every day, so of course, that might cause some panic, but I don't think anyone panicked very much the way they
I think a
should
lot
have.
of what they do is actually they downplay the reports and they don't really kind of make too much of what's happening in the news because I think they're quite keen to avoid creating any kind of panic in the public as well. And,
Of course.
maybe that's a good idea because I'm sure what Russia wants to do is to create panic and create fear. And probably if you don't give those attacks the oxygen that maybe Russia's hoping they get, then you kind of reduce one aspect of the hybrid attack.
Of course. And so, but I know that you are learning. I know that you are accumulating all the possibilities to learn from Ukraine on
Yeah.
how it should be done and how these drone thing should be managed, because that's the future, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, so
Yeah.
let's talk about you a bit more, okay? Do you want to just talk a bit more about where you grew up and about your family and your background and stuff, Tanya?
Oh, okay. I was born in Chernivtsi. This is in Western Ukraine.
Okay.
Uh, and my family, my father is a mountain climber.
Oh, really? Okay.
Climbing mountains and skiing, and my first job was teaching skiing to kids. Uh,
This is where you got the teaching bug from.
yeah. And I was actually 16 or something, but I was a skiing teacher. And apparently I had to go to the mountains all the time, and I really love mountains, the Carpathians.
Yeah.
And then when I was going to an interesting school. It was like English language bias school, and
Okay.
we had English literature, American literature, technical translation, country studies, and something else as separate lessons additional to 5 hours of general English per week. And so I never learned English after school. So everything I learned was just at school. The rest was practicing it in different kinds of work. Of course, I had to learn methodology later, but to teach, not just skiing.
And when you were growing up, was your family a Ukrainian-speaking family or a Russian-speaking family, or?
My family was well. My mother died when I was 2, but her family on her side was very Ukrainian speaking family. My grandmother on my mother's side didn't even know Russian language. But I was growing up with my father and grandparents from his side, who were kind of Russian speaking, but we spoke Ukrainian at home. And this is a kind of language we would call in Ukraine surzik, you know.
This kind of, this mixture of languages.
Because they thought they were speaking Russian maybe, but it was Ukrainian really. But when they went out somewhere to the shop or something, they only used Russian, and we know that this is quite a traumatic thing, because my grandfather went through the Great Famine and the Second World War and all this bureaucratic madness. For example, they accused him of naming my father and his brother Peter and Paul, who are the saints, you know. And he said, no, it's after our relatives and things like that. So this is a traumatic thing. But my father spoke only Russian. And he's Ukrainian. He used Ukrainian only in the mountains, and it was more like Hutzul language, not Ukrainian. This is the dialect. But generally we spoke Russian, and it was a Russian-speaking environment all around.
Yeah.
Then when I was in the 9th grade, I think, we had a great Ukrainian literature teacher who came back from Canadian diaspora. She told us the story about how Vasil Stus was murdered in prison, and that his lawyer was this Viktor Medvedchuk, who, you know, the story. And I was like, is that the guy who is on TV? Is it really like that? And that, I think that was my turning point. And I started keeping my diaries in Ukrainian. I can't say it was super conscious and I had this very strong civil position or something, but as
more of a kind of gradual process.
It started, I think it started back then. And so then it was quite conscious to start my studying at the university in Ukrainian language and literature department.
Okay.
I didn't, as I was saying, I didn't learn English afterwards.
It sounds like you didn't need to be honest.
Thank you. But I can hear myself. I hear the mistakes, but so then after 11th grade, I moved to Kyiv to study Ukrainian language and literature, and I was planning to become a journalist, and I was planning to somehow deal with the culture and to somehow deal with these with this Soviet background that we have everywhere. We still have it. And in journalism, it didn't work out with me right away. So I started teaching, and then I
You
realized
first
that
started teaching English or teaching Ukrainian or literature or what?
right after the university, I was working at the museum that
Okay.
was Pavlo Tychina Museum. It's another Ukrainian poet. And in this museum, I really liked the idea of museum and doing some research, working with his handwriting, letters, and everything, deciphering things. It was a lot of fun, but generally the management of the whole thing was quite Soviet. So I'm moving on, and then I think. I started working in some PR agency, and then Maidan started. And so I decided, okay, I have to go and do something with the education. So I started teaching English and world literature and drama.
All at once, basically, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
not all at once. Those
Yeah, yeah,
were
yeah, yeah. But I mean,
different
around the same
different
time.
subjects. Uh, Afterwards, but if there are teachers who are listening to us, you know that teaching is great, but money is terrible. So I had to had to move somewhere else, and I went to work on TV. I worked there for a while until I realized that it's all too political, and I came back to education as the Cambridge University Press representative, and
Oh,
worked
that's
there
the
for
enemy for me.
yeah, your enemy, rival, not enemy.
Let us go for
Um,
rival. Okay.
Good competitor. Uh, but anyways, I recently finished this journey, and it was a great journey because I think we managed to make those changes that uh, I was thinking were making this terrible Soviet background. At least in a way, English language is taught.
Yeah,
And so
yeah, yeah.
I think that was
I
a
think there's
great
been
thing.
massive changes in the way English is taught in Ukraine just in the time I've been coming. You know, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I think I first came in like maybe 2008, 2009, and when I look at the kind of new generation of teachers coming through, I think that there's an incredible difference and difference in the level of competence of the teachers, sort of linguistically, pedagogically, and even now during wartime. I mean, I know from the times I've been back since the war started, the full-scale war started, just the motivation and the enthusiasm of the teachers is incredible.
It is, and this desire to learn not only English and to understand not only how to teach English, but how to create some kind of environment and uh, cultural environment where we don't just teach English. And
Yeah,
I think my biggest achievement, the seminars and conferences which I used to hold, was building this mindset that we are not teaching English. When we teach English, we are teaching culture, and
yeah,
we create this ability of students to not to compare cultures, but to see that there are differences, and from these differences we learn something about ourselves, like meeting with another culture through the language, through the literature, through different
yeah.
activities that we do.
And I guess English has become much more central to Ukraine and Ukrainian identity since the Maidan. And I think as more kind of young Ukrainians are looking towards Europe and thinking about maybe a kind of, you know, a future in the European Union, you can feel that English is more important inside the country.
Yeah, it is, and I always it's interesting that you asked me about language, because whenever people speak Russian to me, that happens, and we
Yeah, yeah.
cannot deny that. I'm like, okay, when you are saying something, there are two things you are saying. First is they exactly what you mean, but the second is the your choice of the language shows me where you are directing your culture. And when you speak Russian, why would you be directing your culture that way? Like you perform what you are, and whether you are part of this culture or that culture. And of course, I in the last three years, is it 3 years of the war? 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah, I used to travel a little bit because I also I'm also a theater maker.
Yeah,
So
we'll come to that.
yeah, I had to travel, and I went to I think Romania or Poland, uh, mm, somewhere in Gdansk, and there was a lady who used to be a very important actress in Poland, and I think she's over 80, and she came up to me and said, "Oh, I saw your performance, very beautiful performance, la la la." And she started speaking Russian to me, and then she said, "I'm sorry, but I don't know English. I know just Russian and Polish, and this is the only language where we can communicate." And I'm like, "Well, I'm sorry, but yes, it is." And she said, "Shall we speak?" And I'm like, "Let's try." But both of us felt this because she still remembers Russian tanks in Gdansk, actually.
Yeah.
This, and we were like, this is so strange that we use it as an instrument which is so far from both our cultures, and this is such a colonizing thing that the language you use to communicate is this one. But we spotted that, and that
Yeah,
was
exactly.
no choice situation. This was the
Exactly.
only way we could communicate. Then we tried, at some point we were like, okay, we can't do this anymore. Let's try, I speak Ukrainian, you speak Polish. And actually the way of understanding was almost the same. And we just kept talking like that till the next 3 days.
It's interesting to
So,
me because, I mean, in a sense, I think what Ukraine and Ukrainians decide to do with language is obviously completely up to Ukrainians. I know, being English, I think we obviously have our own historical legacy of imposing our language on people through, violent, exploitative colonialism. And I guess for me growing up, I realized quite early on that there were lots of people around the world, including in the UK, who were from backgrounds that had been colonized by England, by the UK, and they were using English as a tool of resistance against colonialism and against the empire. And they were kind of, so I mean, I grew up, part of the time I was growing up was in South London, around a lot of Jamaicans and around a lot of reggae, and there were a lot of Jamaican artists who were using English to critique colonialism and imperialism, and they were using it in a very kind of defiantly Jamaican way. It was like, we're not trying to speak the Queen's English, we're not interested in that, we got our own way of speaking English, and we're going to use it to tell you what you need to hear about what you've done to us. And I always found that really interesting, the way that the language can be subverted as well. I completely understand in Ukraine at the moment why it would be rejected.
Uh, I don't even think it can be our case in any future, even long-term future, because it's very specific case. But I think that the main reason why it works with England is that England took the responsibility for being a colonizer.
At some
Uh,
point, yeah, took us
yes,
a
and
while to get there.
it was quite a long time ago, like in 60s.
Yeah,
They took this responsibility, as well as at some point Germans took the whole responsibility for what was done by Nazis, and that's all about responsibility. And when there is no responsibility, there is no way we can use language as a cultural instrument to influence. We don't need to influence, you know.
yeah,
We
yeah,
just need to,
yeah.
we
You
need
just
to
need to
survive.
defeat them. Yeah,
That's, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I understand it's a very different context. So, given that, when people speak Russian to you in Ukraine, what do you do? What's your response now? Do you just
Um,
immediately switch to Ukrainian, or?
I I answer in Ukrainian, and usually people switch,
Yeah,
and I never have like problems with that. Um, Really, people just switch. I don't
yeah,
tell them like, please stop
yeah, yeah,
speaking.
yeah, yeah,
I just keep going as I go and being open. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes there might be some aggression, but it just does. It just means that this is not my kind of person, and there is nothing there is nothing we can talk about. So why would I keep talking? You know. Um, so if we're talking about people from Ukraine who went abroad and keep speaking Russian, all of them have their different reasons and so on and so on, but mainly this is the environment. They moved to this environment, and they don't really need to um, to prove anything, to think of survival in the way we might think of it. I don't know. I really don't know what's in the head of other people who keep speaking Russian. All I know is that it is effort. You put effort to
yeah,
switch. You put effort to use the language and not to switch back, even knowing that people will understand me and I will just say the way I say. This is effort to rebuild your mindset, and you know that the worldview picture is coded in the language. And it's very difficult sometimes, even for me, because in my family we used to say this phrase in this case, and this is a very uh, general, everyday life case. And I would just say something, and then like, I catch myself. This is a Russian, and there is no equivalent in Ukrainian
yeah,
because it's
yeah,
not a part of Ukrainian culture.
yeah,
It's not even about Russian culture. It's about Soviet culture, you know.
yeah,
So I catch this Soviet little people in my head and throw them. So this is actually a lot of work that people have to do if they want to build this new cultural environment where but also I need to understand it's still my background.
yeah,
It didn't go anywhere with all the music, even terrible music that we had. We didn't have other music back then, or films, and it's a huge part of me which I'm not like getting rid of completely, but I spot it and I'm trying to change it. And a lot of people are busy with other things. I just have this ability to put this effort from time to time, and no, all the time. You can't do it from time to time, but all the time. And for example, there is this manipulation, like but soldiers, some of the soldiers would speak Russian. Of course, they are doing
of
very
course,
different effort to
yeah,
help us survive and
yeah,
help this culture survive. So we don't go there into this manipulation. But we as civilians, we have time for at least this effort.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Can I just backtrack a little bit? Because you mentioned around the time you started teaching, the Maidan happened. And I wondered if you could say a bit more about the Maidan and what impact that had on you and what it was like being in Kyiv at that time.
I just graduated from the university that year, and it was an interesting thing because right in autumn 2013, we went to Crimea to perform. I was acting back then, and we were performing at this House of Officers for Ukrainian Marine Forces. That was so bizarre. Then we came back, and then in a few months Maidan started, and then in other few months I realized that okay, that was the last time I went to Crimea. But it started as a really fun activity. I think I was there from the very first day. It was raining, not heavily, but you know, this drizzling.
Drizzle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the word. And we were drinking tea, singing songs as you know, students, and there was a lot of fun. But then a lot of events, people know about them. There is a great film, by the way, on Netflix about
Winter on
Maidan.
Fire.
Yeah.
Incredible film, yeah.
And I was watching and I'm like, oh, I was right there. And I think I blocked a lot of memories. And some of them got unpacked only in 2022. Okay, here is the reason and consequences. But
were you still there on the Maidan when the shooting started and everything?
I was there till the very end. And by the way, officially Maidan finished on the 23rd of February in 2014. And then in 8 years, 24th of February, you know, that was
well, the Russians like symbolism.
Yeah, they do. But I was there almost every day. But for the night, I would go home. Not every night. Sometimes I was staying there at night. But I wasn't, not all the time that I was in this epicenter of crisis. But I remember the dead bodies in St. Michael's Church. I remember the injured people down in Statutska Street. I remember how we were digging the cobblestones in front of the conservatory, making all those Molotov cocktails, and that was like I remember how coffins were brought all over, and this music still is very striking, and I avoid this music.
And as I'm sure you know, I mean, a lot of Russian propaganda and apologists for Russian aggression in the West, like Jeffrey Sachs or Chomsky or all these people, often refer to the Maidan as a US-backed coup. Okay,
no one paid me.
How does someone like you process this? Like, how does it feel to be told that you weren't really protesting, you were just part of an American coup?
How do you process Russian propaganda? You either you believe it or you
I know people in the West who still use this line. I know people in England who still say, "Oh well, the Americans launched a coup in 2014," and it's like
that's the lack of understanding of what Ukrainian culture is and what exactly we were doing at Maidan. And I think most people I know at Maidan, they were not. Nobody was thinking about Russian propaganda or anything. All we were thinking about that, okay, this is a terrible president. Now we graduated from the university and looks like we are the subjects of this democratic state. So let's do something and see what happens. So we go, we do, and what happened? We were beaten up. And we're like, okay, this is not working with us. We go more of us go, and then older people join. Like I was 20 something. Then after the first time it collapsed in a way, more people around 30, 40 years joined, and I remember this huge crowd, very organized crowd of people going, and the sound of it was so amazing, like all the people going having the same intention, because our intention was we don't want Russian pop culture. It's not interesting. I don't like it. I don't like Russian way of being, of existence. I just, this is not mine. I'm looking into Europe, and I want to be directed there, and I want to have possibilities to travel there and to communicate with that culture, not this culture. So that was my choice, my personal choice. And just because that thing didn't interest me at all, like it was so far away. I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's not how I live. Then more and more people went out because students were beaten up.
Yeah,
That was reactive, because
yeah,
our point was active.
yeah,
We as civil subjects, we acted out. We said
yeah,
something, and then we were supported, but only because of the first blood.
yeah,
And then we were supported more and more, and this is very European way of reacting to things. You only support those who are victims. You're a victim, we support you. But if you are strong and you act, that might be provoking, you know.
yeah.
You just act there. We don't do that. So yeah, but in the end, I think even then, Europe didn't understand that this action, because this action wasn't supported, they took Crimea, they took part of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. But at the same time, we were quite weak as the state back
Yeah,
then, and so this is not just Europe's fault, of course. It's
yeah,
mostly
yeah,
our responsibility for sure. But again, we were young, and we just wanted to have nice lives, you know.
And
Uh,
you didn't get your check from the CIA or the FBI then, no?
I wish I did. To be honest, it would be
Lost in the
nice to
post.
have it.
So from 2014 to 2022, how aware of what was happening in Donbass were you, and how aware of the kind of, you know, what they called the frozen war were you?
Even well, back then I had a boyfriend who was who went there from the very first days
To fight.
to yes,
Yeah,
um, and I wouldn't go there too much, but it was not very long relationship. But we kept connection just as friends. So I knew something, but still, if you don't feel it physically, which I
yeah,
never wish to anyone. If you don't
yeah,
feel physically what is war, it's very difficult to understand. And I didn't feel it physically back then. I went to work on the TV, and every morning at 6 o'clock, I had this report from Donetsk, Luhansk regions. Like this many people were injured, this many shootings happened. Um, those houses were ruined, blah, blah, blah. And that was just the report and numbers for me. And even people who were killed were reports and numbers for me.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
even when I went, at some point, I went to one of the villages in Carpathians, and there was a big procession, how do we call it, like funeral
procession, funeral
going on.
procession.
Yeah, and this is more like a body experience, because you realize that, oh, this is there, but this is here. It's very close here
Yeah.
in Western Ukraine, and you kind of feel these things, but not to the full extent, because when and I think there are many people even now in Ukraine who don't really feel exactly this is.
Yeah.
And even now in Ukraine, I met a guy who told me that what happened in Bucha was partly staged, and I'm like, I was there. Uh, where did you get this information? And there are proofs
Uh-huh.
on this Telegram channel and so on and so on. Okay, but and you, there is no way you can process this is Russian propaganda. You just believe it for some reason, or not. And yeah, this body experience is very difficult to explain. Um, and mm, of course, I knew what was going on. I had, working in theater, I had these performances that were somehow in a hidden way, but communicating the warning of what is genocide, what is war, and so on. I rather wanted to understand, but there was no way I could experience these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I know from talking to other people over the years doing these lives, when I've talked to people who are from areas that were occupied in 2014 and they ended up moving to Kyiv or to Dnipro or whatever, I know that their experience was this kind of alienation almost, where they would arrive in Kyiv and people would sort of not understand why they were there or what they'd been going through, or they'd blame them for what they'd been through, or they'd say, oh, you bloody separatists, it's all because of you wanting to join Russia. And for them, it was like, you don't understand what's happened up there. And
yeah,
I remember one of my friends, I don't know if she's watching, Eva, she told me this story where she was in a block, and as soon as she moved to Kiev, she covered her windows with tape, okay, because she
yeah,
felt like, if the bombing starts, I want to be safe. And she said she remembers looking out and seeing another block like 500 meters away, and one other window was covered in tape. And she remembers thinking, like, Jesus, I bet they're also from Lugansk or Donetsk. You know, it's like, hey, we see each other here. And all the other windows were sitting there waiting for February 24th, you know?
yeah. I that, of course, I didn't understand, because first of all, I didn't have many friends.
Yeah,
Yeah, those friends who I had from the occupied regions, somehow they didn't speak about it. I think because of this alienation they felt.
yeah,
Um, I had a friend from Donetsk who with whom we spoke a lot, and I think that was the first time I had like a proper. But that was back in 2020, I think.
okay.
Like we had this very long conversation when he mentioned different things, but of course I cannot understand what it
Yeah,
means.
yeah.
Cannot really feel what it means when you lose the place of your where you were born, and with no possibility to visit it again, or even if it's ruined. Um, I don't think I can understand it, but of course I feel this empathy, but on the level of empathy, not of I have the same experience.
It's funny,
Um,
one of my students is originally from Bakhmut, and she said one day in class that the only good thing about coming from Bakhmut is she understands that because the city no longer exists, at least it won't be occupied by Russians. And there won't be Russians living in it. There won't be Russians moving there. It's basically gone. and the whole city doesn't exist in the way that it used to exist. And in a strange way, this is comforting. You know, I mean, it's when you hear those kind of stories, you realize how far you are from understanding how all of those things feel for people.
I very much feel what she says, because I visited Bakhmut a lot back in 2022 till winter 2023, I think. I don't remember exactly. And now I used to stay a lot in Pokrovsk, in Myrnograd, and that's it hurts to think that they're being ruined and just swiped off the earth. That's terrible. But it's like, imagine a Russian wearing your dress.
Yeah, I know.
And you
I know.
cannot go home,
I know.
reading your books, taking your favorite things, playing your piano, I don't know, destroying your piano because he cannot play, for example, or he can play, but he plays Tchaikovsky there, and you can't do anything with it. That's even more terrible. So because and in Kupiansk, I remember we went to Kupiansk right after liberation. Now it's taken again, but anyways, right after liberation, we went to Kupiansk. And in one of the schools, the teacher showed us the posters and books that they brought to teach children, and that's something I think everyone can relate to. Like they are teaching bullshit to children. And I saw those posters, and one of the posters, it was the portrait of Taras Shevchenko, who is a Ukrainian poet, and
National
it's
poet,
written,
yes.
yeah, and it's written there, Taras Shevchenko, Russian artist, visual arts, because he was studying in St. Petersburg. And this is a poster, and there is a QR code, and you can go and read more in Russian language. You can read more about all this bullshit. I couldn't go through because it's forbidden to go to Russian websites in Ukraine. So
Yeah.
I didn't read more, but there were history books developed specifically for the occupied territories.
Yeah.
They're not history books for Russians.
Yeah.
They're history books for Ukrainians here.
I
And
think that this is something people outside of Ukraine really, really need to understand better, which is what Russia does in the territories that it occupies. Because I know that what's happening in all of the occupied territories is kidnapping of Ukrainian children, Russifying of those cities, complete erasure of Ukrainian language and identity, and slow brainwashing of kids in the occupied territories so they can be used to fight
I
against
wouldn't
Ukraine.
say it's slow. It's very intense. It's super intense. Um, and now imagine it's 3.5 years. And first imagine in Donetsk, it's already 12 years. Those kids who were like 4 years old are now in the war, most probably. They are mobilized,
Just
and
being
they are
used as
happy to
cannon
go
fodder.
there. And now 3.5 years, imagine those first grade students, pupils who went to school in 2022 and what they've learned in those schools now. And this is almost irreversible now. And what will happen then? And those would be people who I just when I start thinking about it, it's super crazy. Like, at least for children, we for those children who go to school, well, there are a lot of organizations and who help Ukrainians get out from the occupied areas. But again, we understand that a lot of people were building their houses all their lives,
Yeah.
with the land, with their favorite piano, with their
Yeah.
favorite stuff in the
With their
house. They
field of
were,
potatoes that they don't want to leave to the Russians, you know.
yes,
Yeah.
and they stay there and they wait for Ukraine to take the territories back. And the more they stay, the more disappointed they become and angry, of course. And there are so many things into it. And the best thing for children would be, even if their parents really love their houses, still it would be to get out of there. For now. But again, not everyone knows how, not everyone understands the consequences, and
Yeah.
well,
So can I go back a little bit? I feel like you keep opening all these doors that I'm failing to walk through. There's so many things that are coming up in the conversation. Do you want to talk a bit more about your theatrical work, and what does it mean that you're a theatre maker, and what do you do with all of that? And uh,
I used to, when I started teaching, I had a theater group with students for a while. We were staging Ostap Vyshnya. This is another Ukrainian really great writer. Funny stories. He wrote funny stories, but he was a very depressed personality who was repressed by Soviets back in 20th century, and we were staging him. And then I started working with Pro English Theatre. This is an English-speaking theatre in Kyiv, and I was there with them from the very beginning and up until 2023, and then our ways parted because we just our ways parted. This happens. And that was a great experience. We were using only English in our performances. I was staging Harold Pinter, Marius von Mayenburg. Harold Pinter is my favorite. He's very British and very funny and very political, and you can talk about the war through any of his shows somehow. I don't know how he does it, but
waiting for Godot. You know, when's he gonna come?
yeah,
Yeah.
and Harold Pinter was all about that. Some other more Spanish, Shakespeare, of course, and I think I stopped doing that because now I'm trying to understand how do I do Ukrainian theater, because of course it's very comfortable to make English-speaking theater because it's English culture based, and the base is very strong. The fundamental works are there. They are classic. They are updating themselves all the time through different stage experiences.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
with
yeah.
Ukrainian theater is much more difficult. So now I'm doing PhD in in
Okay.
uh,
God, you're a sucker for punishment.
yeah, to have some basis on which I can start building some Ukrainian theater. But yeah, there are works that can be there, but I'm now in this search mode. Like, what do I do with Ukrainian theater? I made another show back in 2021 with a British director in another theater. This is Left Bank Theater. We were doing Romeo and Juliet with all female actresses.
Okay.
It was really interesting, and somehow he felt that he should do it with all female actresses in Ukraine. And then we started telling him, okay, so do you understand the symbolism and everything? It's war here. And he's like, is there a war in Ukraine? And we're like, yes. But that was in 2021.
Okay.
And then we brought this show to Mariupol. Um, and that's it. Then I staged New World Order by Harold Pinter. I started working on it in January 2022, and I stopped working on it apparently in February 2022 for a while, but then I decided to finish it, and there was a premiere on 27th of March in Deutschen Theater Berlin in somewhere in Romania. So it was a stream because we were in the basement in Kyiv and was still occupied all around. And it was.
I'm interested at this stage in what your feelings about the role of art and artists are during wartime. Because I'm sure it must be something that Ukrainian actors, theatre makers, artists, poets, writers must be thinking about in the current climate. And I just wondered if it was something you had any strong feelings about, or...
I think there is huge responsibility on Ukrainian artists, and especially theater, because this is the only immediate art. This is not a film. This is not a book. This is immediate, and it has to communicate immediate problems, and it's difficult in the wartime because. For me, and this is my subjective view, for me, theater is very political, and it should communicate. It's like a space for really strong political decisions and performance of how this political communication, political in the meaning of ancient Greek political, not political the way we understand it now. So that's where people can make decisions and understand that they are the part of society and act accordingly. But a lot of Ukrainian artists decided that art can be an escape. And this is a place to entertain, to get distracted from what's going on in reality and so on, which also has a right to exist, because I can't imagine a soldier who goes home for 3 days and wants to, and then someone
You're probably not watching Apocalypse Now or anything on those trips.
Yeah, exactly. So, so different things should be there, but the theater that I would like to develop more, and I think we have the lack of this kind of theater, is the political theater or social community theater. We have a huge gap. We have a gap starting from 1920s, when all the theater all over Soviet Union became this propaganda instrument, and it was like this till 90s. Then in 1990s something started moving around, and then again we had this invasion of Russian culture, which is the same as it was in the previous century, and this idea that theater is entertainment, but somehow it communicates a very low way of thinking, is still there. And so I'm trying to understand, how do we fill in this gap? Because European theater in this time went through a lot of different things: the performative turn, the whole experiments with the body, experiments with the voice, experiments with all synesthetic things that can happen there. And we didn't have these experiments on the level, like there are some experiments of some group in a basement. There is no system like that. And since we still have this Ministry of Culture who dictates what who just finance those theaters who mainly serve this escape. That's a bit problematic.
My impression of Ukrainians is that you don't tend to wait for permission from ministries of culture or to,
No.
I have an impression of people who are basically very good self-starters and very good at self-organization. And, obviously in the long run, you need to have some of those people in the ministries, but
That's true, and I think it's really good that we can do it. And there are so many independent initiatives and theater groups. There is this wonderful Opera Aperta group who took the London Award for best opera in the world. And that was wonderful. But the point is that the state funds these initiatives. In Europe, for example, there are a lot of independent initiatives that get funding from the state. In our case, you do your independent work and you independently finance yourselves, So, as well as Maidan, it's difficult to believe that such a huge thing was independently created without financial support from somewhere else. But this is the great thing that we can do. But it would be better if we could like properly see why some kind of art is also important, and at the same time, I think it's important to say here, for a while I've been writing for PEN Ukraine. There is a project, people of culture killed in the war. There are wonderful texts. They are translated about people who decided that their first responsibility is to defend the state, and art is quite secondary. First is to survive.
I've just finished reading the book by Artem Shapai called Ordinary People Don't Carry Machine Guns, which is, it's kind of about this. It's about how all his life he'd thought of himself as a kind of anarchist, pacifist, creative. And then when the full-scale invasion started, he ended up signing up, and kind of about the logic of his decision, and an incredibly moving book.
Yeah. And a lot of people of culture really who could... Oh,
you okay? Oh, bear with us 1 minute, people. Not sure what's happened, but maybe there's an air raid alert there. I'm not sure. Let's see if Tania connects again in a minute. Thank you to everyone for joining and for all of the comments. Thank you for the comments from Japan. Yeah, I knew about those islands, the Kurile Islands. Thank you for those comments. Bear with me 1 minute while we see if Tania can rejoin. She's left. I'm not sure if that means there's an air raid in Kyiv or not. I'll just wait 1 minute to see if she's going to rejoin or not. There's been so many things that I wanted to talk about with Tania that it may be that we just have to schedule another live further down the line. But I'll wait and see if she manages to rejoin. Yeah, thank you to everyone for all of the comments. I'll put a couple of links in the stories later to various things. PEN Ukraine that Tania was just mentioning is a kind of collection of a collective of Ukrainian writers. And I think the chair of PEN Ukraine at the moment is an amazing guy called Volodymyr Yermolenko, who has a really great podcast that I recommend people listen to. I'll put a link to that in later. Earlier, Tania was talking about her experiences on the Maidan, the Yanukovych protests in 2013 and 2014, and she mentioned a documentary called Winter on Fire, which I think is available free on YouTube and on Netflix, and is just an incredible, visceral, harrowing documentary of young Ukrainians struggling to make themselves heard to an authoritarian government, and how that ended up. So I'm guessing Tanya's either had to go to the basement or to a shelter or into the bathroom or something, because she hasn't rejoined. I'm hoping she's okay. I feel a bit like our conversations are cursed, because last week we were supposed to meet to talk and Russia knocked out her internet provider. And this time we're in the middle of the conversation. And yeah, well, this happens. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've all not done great in our responsibility to help Ukraine. And one of the reasons that I do these lives, I think, is because it's really important for people outside of Ukraine to understand what's at stake. It's important for people to understand what Russia does in the occupied territories, the way it radicalizes and mobilizes people in the occupied territories to then fight Russia's imperial wars. I think it's really important. Tanya was talking a lot about how if you don't feel the physical reality of war, it's easy to be distanced from it. And, of course, that's true. There are terrible things happening all over the world that we all feel remote from. Things like the ongoing conflict in Sudan, which very few of us stop and think about. But I think it's really crucial for the rest of the Western world at the moment, if we're interested in protecting and preserving our democracies, to understand what Russia, with the backing of China, with the backing of Iran, with the backing of North Korea, this kind of axis of autocracies and dictatorships and one-party states, using the war on Ukraine as a weapon against Western liberal democracy. And the fact that 3.5 years into the war, Ukraine is only now able to start hitting targets inside Russia because we haven't provided them with the weapons that Ukraine needs is really scandalous, I think. Better late than never, but this could have been happening 3 years ago. This could have been happening 3.5 years ago. We could have been providing Tomahawks and Storm Shadows and Tauruses and the kind of long-range missiles Ukraine needs to hit the aggressor country and to start to be able to defend itself properly. So Tanya hasn't managed to make it back. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for watching. I'll leave a recording of this conversation up on my Instagram and I'll put it up on YouTube as well. So thank you very much and take care. Look after yourselves and Slava Ukraini.